Hello, everyone. Pardon me. Hello, and welcome to Lecture 10 of BMT 101. As you are, I'm sure, aware, this is going to be our last lecture together, and I will certainly um, be available to answer anyone's questions as we go through the next few days, but I do want to just say that this is the last lecture, so hopefully you will have a chance to view it before your assignment, before you start your discussion, before you work on your assignments. So this is all about process card industry data security standards. It's extremely important, this call to action. There are a couple of articles that I had sent out. They were from 2014, but they are very pertinent because they explain and describe the situation that happened in 14 or 15 hotels that were owned by one franchisee, and that franchisee had some lapses in their security systems that caused guest information to be shared, and the franchisees were owned Hiltons and Marriotts and Starwood hotels, and the reputation to those three companies, by virtue of the association with the brand, was significant. We had, in my company, of course, Sheraton is a Starwood brand. We had guests who immediately were contacting us asking if they're secure, if their data was secure, and it really is. It has a big impact on guests' perception, and in this case, these franchise hotels that this occurred in were just a small segment of the overall hotel population, but it really caused ripples throughout the industry. And as you can see here, this is from this week's reading from the American Hotel Lodging Association article, that upwards to 50%, 55% of credit card fraud comes from the hospitality industry. And this was data that was presented in 2008. So I'm sure that there are more updated studies on fraud, but it's a significant amount, as you can see, come from hospitality industry. 85% of that comes from small businesses, which is what I had mentioned before. Franchises falls into that category, and so again, a large number come from the smallest merchants, and those merchants are the ones that really can they can have just as significant impact on their own bottom line as well as their industries as one of the larger box properties or companies. TJ Maxx had a very well-known data breach several years ago where tens of thousands, if not more, customers had their credit card information shared, and that was just merely because of an update or a patch that hadn't been run on one of their point-of-sale systems. And so that's an example of a big nationwide merchant, but the mom-and-pop pizza store on the corner can have a similar breach and maybe not have 1 million customers impacted, but the overall impact can be significant, and we'll talk about those in a moment. So there's a couple things that have to be done in order to be PCI compliant. There's a self-assessment questionnaire that has to be done no matter which size business you have. In the week's readings you'll see more about this, but each business has a different questionnaire that they need to submit to their acquiring bank annually. Acquiring bank is the banks that typically issue credit cards, so it could be American Express, etc. And then network scans must be conducted quarterly. Now I think that's crazy, and again this is 2008 data, so perhaps a recommendation would have been updated by now. Network scans are done continuously, nightly. There's quarterly would obviously be way too infrequent. But the point that I want to make here is we are framing this up as if it's an IT problem, and it really isn't. You have to understand that there are so many manual processes that can cause credit card information to be inappropriately breached. So this is, again, some information that came from the reading. The vulnerabilities come from storing prohibited data, and storing prohibited data is credit card information that you don't absolutely need at that point in time, or storing information beyond credit card data. For whatever reason, if you are a hospital and you have, as an example, and you have records there that are beyond what you're needing for the doctor's diagnosis, that are stored, is another example of prohibited data. But in our case, in the hotel business, it's really the full credit card number when it's not needed to be stored. Years ago, you would walk through an office, and I am not exaggerating, you could walk through any hotel accounting department at 6:30 in the evening on a Tuesday, go to any desk and find multiple credit cards written in either handwritten or carbon copies of credit card information. You will not, hopefully, find that information anymore. That is a huge opportunity for a data breach. Unpatched systems, we talked about TJ Maxx. They just didn't do an update. Use of vendor default settings, so when they are setting up their interfaces with their credit card companies and others, they're not setting another level of security. Poorly coded web-facing applications, so creating a web page that requires entry of information such as credit cards without the right without the correct codes and security settings, and then unnecessary and vulnerable services on servers. And so, we have, and I'm sure other companies are the same way, we have so many restrictions on what we as the hoteliers can do on our computers that are connected to our networks, to our servers. We cannot put thumb drives. It doesn't matter. Our thumb drives on all of our computers at the hotel have been disabled because of the huge amount or the huge number of data breaches that have been caused by malicious viruses that are embedded in thumb drives. And so, just basic things like that are so locked down in our current world in order to minimize this vulnerability. So really, eliminating the storage of the prohibited credit card data is a huge piece of this. Every department within the hotel or other areas of the business need to not store data. So not only are you looking at your accounting department, but your in-room dining department, if they're taking orders for future amenities to be delivered for guests, there has to be systems there where credit card information that may be needed in order to send that box of chocolate and that bottle of wine to Mr. Smith when he arrives on next Tuesday, that credit card information isn't stored someplace that would be vulnerable. Protect cardholder data using secure payment applications, which obviously that is an IT function, and then secure the environment according to PCI DSS, data security standards. And that is some of the things that we're going to be talking about here in a few minutes. Non-compliance is extremely expensive. The first thing that you can think of is non-compliance is fines to the business. So if a PCI audit was run on my hotel as an example, and they found data non-compliance, we could be fined, and those fines can be extremely significant. But then when you actually have a data breach, those costs are multiplied significantly. You have lost revenues because You will potentially have sales or other information, other revenues that may have to be written off based on the guest's experience. You'll have compensation to the banks. So the businesses are required to compensate banks if they are put at a loss because of these breaches. Those guests who are impacted have credit card and identity theft protection that is paid for by the company that caused it. You have to pay higher data processing fees to banks. So as an example, if you're driving your car and you have a bad habit of running into things, you're going to pay a higher auto insurance. Well, the same thing is if you are convicted of or if you're guilty of data breaches, the banks are going to charge you higher fees to process data. Damaged reputation. Just imagine, like I said, those 14 hotels that were impacted by that data breach in 2014. Those were hotels that had that is an example of damaged reputation all across the companies. So Marriott, Hilton, and Starwood all suffered because of that. Now, we may not have lost business per se, but there's the potential that we did, because as you can see in this last bullet point, we could have lost business and not known it because people thought that when they heard that this data breach had occurred, if they weren't looking into it further, they may have just understood it to be Starwood, and they may have pulled their business, taken their business elsewhere. So these are just describing some of the things. You have IT firewalls and updates, patches to network computers that need to happen all the time. I talked about the inability to plug a thumb drive into a computer at my hotel, the requirement that emails are scanned and are filtered before we even receive them. We're constantly on the guard for unsolicited emails that contain attachments, etc., that are oftentimes viruses. You have a secure fax process. So there is a secure fax, meaning a fax that will receive but will not print any of the information it receives, and it will hold that information in an encrypted form until the point at which they put in a code into the secure fax, and then it will print that information. So you have prepaid reservation forms that clients send in, and their credit card information is on those faxes. But we at the hotel end have a very secure process for receiving those. And I'll go into further detail here in a minute about what it actually happens once we've printed it. But in the olden days, you had fax machines all over the hotel spitting out credit card numbers, literally. Guests to this day still sometimes don't understand the vulnerability that they are creating by faxing credit card information, and sometimes they'll see a sales manager's fax number on a business card and think, oh, well, I'll send my credit card information to them and not to the accounting department, in which case that is opening up the hotel for a potential data breach, that they didn't potentially create that situation, but there are protocols for that. And one of the things that I'll get to the emails in a moment. So we have credit cards that come in, credit card information that comes in on fax, the secure fax. We have locked storage areas that have a protocol for who can access it when we no longer need that information, because oftentimes we'll put that reservation in, but it has the signature on it, so, and the authorizations, so we will have to hold on to that paper form of that fax until the point at which the reservation actualizes, and then after that guest has checked into the hotel, then that information needs to be immediately shredded so that we no longer have it on file. At which point, up until that point, like I said, it was all in a locked storage area. These are PC compliant requirements that our hotel has. Access levels. Last week I showed you all, or we talked about the access levels for security system access. It's the same thing here, and it is the same exact process. Those access levels that are allowed are by design, and some positions within the hotel have access to be able to see in our systems more credit card information, at least the last 4 digits as an example, that other individuals within the hotel, because of their access levels, would never be able to see. Every associate in our hotel has, and in our business, has a code of conduct sign-off sheet that specifically states that we will do everything in our power. We've all been trained on PCI compliance, and we'll do everything that we need to do to be compliant. And then, as I said, email systems blocking credit card information in email. So if you were considering, which I would not recommend you do, but if you were considering sending your credit card number through the email, and it was sent to, most large companies have this, what will happen is the firewall or the email server will identify the credit card number just through the string of numbers as they are listed on the email, and it will actually bounce back to me as a guest to say, this email that you sent, or the email that you sent, contained what appeared to be a credit card number. We do not allow that based on our PCI compliance requirements. So it's just another fail-safe system. Reasonable care. Hotels have, or innkeepers have, this expectation that, and it's a law that we will exercise reasonable care to safeguard guests from criminal acts. And in the last few years, this has really increased, meaning hotels, or the definition of the term has really changed, meaning that reasonable care has been expanded, and hotels have a higher liability and responsibility for their guests' safety from criminal acts, just based on the fact that these criminal acts have changed over time. So I will end the discussion on PCI compliance with this screenshot, which is from the reading. And again, you can see here, compliance is difficult, but it's so much more cost-effective to be compliant than it is to have a data breach. And so this diagram just shows how the most successful companies are compliant. They have an individual that owns it and goes through all of the steps to ensure that we're compliant, that the hotel or the business is compliant. This dovetails with our week's discussion and last week's discussion around control, because it is typically a finance individual, the director of finance or the assistant director of finance, who owns PCI compliance in any given business. So just a quick couple of things. The final assignment, I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to describe to me what PCI compliance is, what it means to the travel and tourism industry, and why compliance is so important. So, I want you to demonstrate that you know what PCI compliance is and that you understand the impact of it. Please see me if you have questions on this assignment. It is due, as all of the, as every assignment is. If you're turning anything in, it needs to be turned in no later than Sunday, next Sunday, the 14th. I will not accept anything beyond that. So please make sure to have that in mind. And then the last thing is the discussion forum post this week. I just want you to really give me an assessment. Be honest. I'm very thick-skinned, and I'm not gonna. It's not going to impact your grade whatsoever what feedback you have. And this is a group discussion, so hopefully you'll you will be honest with yourselves and with me. If you have things that I could have done differently, better, or things that you found interesting, if I met or didn't meet your expectations for the course, please put it out there. Again, I'm not going to penalize anyone for this. I'm very thick-skinned. I'm very capable of handling this feedback, but I really need this feedback. This is the first quarter that I've taught this class. I realized as we went through the quarter that there were some areas that I wanted to improve for next time I taught the class, but I would just like to open this up for any feedback that anyone has on the course itself. So here's some information for you with regards to the information we just covered. The sources, I sent out these links to these 2 articles. There's a lot more articles out there. You're certainly welcome to utilize any of them for your final paper. And with that, I want to say thank you all very, 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 very much, and I look forward to seeing you all next quarter. I wish you all the best with your summer breaks, and if I don't have a chance to see you in the next class or another class, I hope that our paths cross in the future and that you're all very successful, as I know you will be. So thank you again. Have a great day.